What is the impact of President Biden's dropping out of the presidential race? Join Richard Ebeling and me in this week's Libertarian Angle as we examine that question. Hi, I'm Jacob Hornberger, president of the Future of Freedom Foundation. Welcome to this week's Libertarian Angle, the show that y'all know brings you the principled, uncompromising case for the libertarian philosophy. I'm joined by my co-host, Richard Ebeling, professor of economics at the Citadel. Richard, good to see you again.
Good to see you and to be with our viewers and listeners.
Yep, nice to
Uh,
have you all tuning in again. What, Richard, I interrupted you? Were you going to say
no, no,
something?
no, no. I'm used to being interrupted by you. It's okay.
All right. Well, let me interrupt you by telling you that we've got big news in case you haven't heard it. And that's President Biden has dropped out of the race. And it would appear that Kamala Harris, the vice president, is going to get the nod for the nomination. There's already people that are rallying to her. From what I understand, a likely candidate for the nomination, Gavin Newsom out of California, the governor, has effectively dropped out and endorsed her. She's getting endorsements from state party chairmen, delegates, and she's got $100 million in the bank that she has access to that was with the Biden campaign. Everybody else would not have access to that money. So it looks pretty likely, it's not a done deal, of course, that she's going to be the nominee. And so I guess that means that we're looking to a free society, right, Richard? We got a new candidate in the race, man. I mean, from a libertarian standpoint, we're here, right? Well, not exactly. Different bottle, but same old wine. And policies aren't going to change. The system's not going to change. In fact, it seems to me that these people, including libertarians that are supporting Trump under the notion that Trump will bring us freedom, he's a libertarian, or libertarian oriented, are just, living in la la land. They don't understand that really what we have here is a system problem. It's not a problem of getting different people in public office, or as they often say, better people in public office. Doesn't matter whether it's Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or Gavin Newsom or any of the other people, or Trump or Vance or any of those people. They're all alike. I mean, they're attracted to this statist system, which is a welfare regulatory warfare state. And that as long as you have this system, you're going to still have America in the deep throes of problems. Doesn't matter who's elected. And the problem with this kind of system is that it attracts the kind of people that are attracted to this kind of system, the statist mindset that we can use the state to make society a better thing, to improve conditions for the American people. And of course, all they do is destroy our freedom and destroy our prosperity in the process. And it's not they themselves who are responsible for, like for mismanaging the economy and so forth. It's really the system, which is what the American people want. The American people want a welfare regulatory warfare state system. They just want somebody to be able to manage it well. They exclaim against out of control spending and out of control debt and the war in Israel and Gaza and the war in Ukraine and so forth. But they support the system that brings all of this together, including the out of control spending and debt, primarily with the welfare state, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the warfare state, the national security state. So nothing's going to change, obviously. You got a new candidate in charge, but whether it's Trump and Vance or Harris and her vice presidential candidate, we still need to be making that principled case for liberty, Richard, which necessarily entails making the case for dismantling infringements on freedom, not reforming them, and not getting better people into public office to manage them. What do you think?
Well, I think, you started off, are we not going to be now free? I think that you obviously are an enemy of freedom, Jacob, an enemy of freedom. Don't you understand that when Kamala Harris talks about freedom, she means free healthcare, free college education, free housing, free Social Security, free Medicare and Medicaid. What they basically mean by free is that the government will fund, subsidize, or provide at a zero price those things that they've decided people need, have a desire for, and which in their minds should not have a price tag upon it or not a full price tag. But of course, then the question is, as they say, as the phrase goes, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Somewhere, somehow, everything has to have a bill attached to the service or the product. And in this case, it means either taxing others in society or borrowing money in excess of what is raised in taxes, and basically siphoning resources out of private sector investment uses that they otherwise would have been used for, if not borrowed and put into the hands of the government, with in principle, the promised burden of future taxation to pay back the borrowed sums. That's the very nature of accumulated debt, and any interest agreed upon the principal borrowed. So all they're talking about is robbing Peters to give to these various Pauls, and all under the subterfuge of saying, it's free, it's free. And if you don't get it for free, somehow you're enslaved. Now, she has become a voice in particular for abortion rights. Now, this is a very controversial subject. There are people along the political spectrum who hold views that are either pro-abortion or anti-abortion. But let me suggest that even if you believe in abortion rights for women to have, quote, control of her own body, unquote, from a libertarian point of view, from a classical liberal point of view, even if there were to be a right to abortion, that is, you can go to a medical clinic or a doctor and have that procedure performed, it is not legitimate to expect other people to pick up the tab for it. There is nothing ethical, moral, or just in saying to someone who may sincerely and based upon either a philosophical or a religious belief that abortion is murder, and then expect them to pick up the tax tab for you to what in that person's mind is killing another human being. That's absurd. That's absurd. But that's what they mean by freedom. Having other people pay for anything you want, and expecting that anyone who is forced to pay for those things, regardless of the reason behind or the degree of their objection, they're not to complain about it. Because if they complain about any of this, then you're not sensitive to the choices and the freedom of others. That's the perversity in which the word freedom has been taken by those on the left. Now, it's time to be fair and balanced, Jacob. The same thing applies if you go to Donald Trump and now J.D. Vance. The YJD, I mean, I looked up it. His name is James David. Is he embarrassed or afraid of his first and middle name? I don't know. But anyway, J.D. Vance. What do they advocate? Well, first of all, there is protectionism. Trump talks about a 10% across the board import tax on goods like from Europe and a variety of other countries, maybe a 60%, even, I believe he even mentioned 100% tariff on Chinese goods. And that's Trump's notion of freedom. We're guaranteeing jobs. We're bringing industry back to America. No, he is burdening the American people by giving benefits to some at the expense of others. It doesn't make America great, and it doesn't enlarge freedom. If someone abroad can charge you for a desired product $5, when previously the domestic producer could only sell it to you for his cost of $10, then you buy it from the foreign seller, you have it for $5, leaving $5 left in your pocket to buy other things that previously you couldn't afford, which creates demand, which creates alternative jobs, part of which may be jobs to which the people in the domestic producer who would match the foreign price then move over to and do instead, as well as the jobs and the employments of the people in the foreign country. And what do they do with the dollars they've earned? They buy American products. That benefits the export industry. And even if the foreign seller doesn't want to use the dollars he's earned himself, he goes to the foreign exchange market and he trades those dollars from other currency, a yen, a euro. And why would a person have sold him the yen and euro for the dollars that exporter has wanted, because they want to spend it in dollars. So the Trumpian idea that somehow importing goods, foreign competition, steals jobs, undermines America, is unfair to America, is in the basic senses of economics, crude and ignorant. So that's his denying of freedom, as well as related to that, the picking of winners and the avoidance of losers. He's a central planner. These are the industries that should be cultivated and fostered and grown. These are the industries and the sectors of the economy less important in Donald Trump's mind. And remember, before he was first elected to president, he was once asked by the media, by someone in the media, "You seem to have very few advisors." His response was, "I don't need advisors. I'm the smartest person I've ever met." Well, okay, so now you have a super knowledge complex. Let's go on the border. Free America will be made great by placing a Berlin Wall type wall on the southern border of the United States, not allowing people to freely associate, freely move, freely enter into mutually beneficial exchanges, regardless of the origin from which they may be coming. And while it's a cliche, Jacob, let us not forget that America is a land of opportunity based upon immigrants. Every other country defines people, well, do you have a common ethnicity? Do you have a common geographical area? Do you have a common language? Do you have a common religion? America has been and has been proud of it being the exception. A melting pot of many cultures, many peoples, many faiths, many backgrounds, of one people coming together, a unique society. And that is what Trump wants to end. Now, he's not the first person or the first president or the first politician who's wanted to limit immigration. That's been going on for a long time. But he raises it to a level in his rhetoric of viewing that this is the hallmark of a great nation, closing yourself off to those who want to come here. Now, he says he's only talking about illegal immigration, but then who decides who the legal migrants can be? And again, the mentality of the central planner is there, Jacob, is it not? We decide who should be eligible. We decide who will be let in. We decide what skills or backgrounds they should have. We decide, which takes away the liberty of people on both sides of the border to make their own choices and to associate as they would find it peacefully, mutually advantageous. You can go through all of these lists. Now, I have friends who are conservatives, some are libertarians who say, but Trump lowered taxes. Trump was supported the Keystone Pipeline. And as he said in his acceptance speech, drill, baby, drill. Throw away all this climate change stuff. Well, it's better to have lower taxes. And the market should decide what are the best means of generating energy in changing circumstances. But if he's for something that is, in that sense, a lower tax, less of regulation, it's not part of a systematic, principled idea of freedom and the free society and the rights of individuals. It's ad hoc, what in his mind is good or what is bad. And he decides it as if he's a monarch and saying, I deem this desirable. I deem that to be bad. I therefore decide the future and the direction and what will be given to the people of the country. This is disastrous. So as you were saying, whether it be Kamala Harris, whether it be Donald Trump, whether it be any one of these, the fundamental problem is the mindset of a belief that it is the duty, responsibility, and the right of government, and whoever holds those political offices in the government, to direct, command, and control our freedom and our decisions and our associations with others, because the presumption is they know better what is good for us than we ourselves.
Yeah, and I also read somewhere that Vance favors the administrative state, and that he simply wants to get his people in there to administer it. He figures that they can run things better. They can manage people's lives better than the Democrats. And that's really what this is all about, Richard. It's just a battle over control. But I think the root of the problem is that the average American is raised with the notion that he lives in a genuinely free society. I mean, that's part of the indoctrination of public schools from the first grade, and with that Pledge of Allegiance, with liberty for all. You are indoctrinated with the notion that you live in a free society. It's that Lee Greenwood song that, thank God I'm an American because at least I know I'm free. And that conviction exists in the American people, that we live in a free country as compared to people in North Korea and Cuba and Russia and China and Vietnam and so forth. And once you come up with that conviction after 12 years, and it's not just public schools, it's private schools too, because private schools are licensed by the state. And many of them are run by former public school graduates and school teachers and administrators. And they have that same mindset. You live in a free country. Thank the troops for their service, because when they go to places like Iraq and Vietnam and Afghanistan and Eastern Europe, they are fighting for our freedom. And when the government is drafting people and enacting legislation to draft people, that's because it's necessary to deprive people of freedom to protect their freedom. So if you have that mindset, then you obviously believe that the kind of system we have, which you've described, is a free country. You've got a massive welfare state, okay? And now America hasn't always been a welfare state. The welfare state came into existence in the 20th century. But regardless, even though it's an opposite kind of system from what the system was that America was founded on, it's still freedom. That's the indoctrination. So this system that you were describing, where government takes money from one group of people and gives it to another group of people, that's freedom, because that's the indoctrinated mind. And they'll complain about, oh, Jacob, we've got out of control spending. We got to do something. Those Democrats, my gosh, they look at the debt, Jacob, the debt's out of control and all this. And then you say, well, okay, why don't we abolish Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the national security state, which are the biggest components of the spending and the debt. Oh no, Jacob, I put my money in, I got a right to get it back, and we got to keep these programs intact. Really? Well, then how do you expect to do something about all this spending and debt you're talking about? Oh, Jacob, we got to get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse in government programs. That's the key to this. And they all believe in the transfer system. They just want to be in charge of it. And that's what they call freedom. Is it when the Democrats are in charge, that's freedom. When the Republicans are in charge, for them, that's freedom. And then you've got the regulatory state, the state that Vance supports. He wants to get his people in charge. They just want control over regulating people's lives. The drug war is a good example. It's not just financial regulation. They want to be in charge of the system that puts people in jail for the mere act of possessing, distributing a drug that they haven't approved of. If they've approved of it, like alcohol or tobacco, then it's okay. But if it's marijuana or cocaine, no way. We're going to put you in long periods of time in jail, even though we've been waging this war for decades without any success at all. And your point about immigration is just right on, because the Republicans love to play this game of, oh, well, the Democrat Biden has an open border policy, and they're going to say the same thing about Harris. Well, these are people, Democrats, that send troops to the border. They deport massive amounts of people. Obama was known as the deporter in chief. And when people are avoiding their system and circumventing their system, they can't get it in their minds that it's the system that's failed, because that's the purpose of their system that Biden kept in existence, Trump's Berlin Wall. And the purpose of that is to keep people from coming in without permission. Well, obviously that system has failed, but rather than blame their system, which comes with a police state under the guise of freedom, they blame it on open borders. Well, open borders is the dismantling of all these restrictions, the dismantling of ICE and the Border Patrol and all the restrictions and all the police state activity, the highway checkpoints and so forth, the warrantless searches. That's a far cry from what we have today. What we have today is an immigration police state that simply hasn't worked. It'll never work because they're trying to repeal the laws of supply and demand. And it's just a matter of the only difference between Democrats and Republicans is their means of enforcement. That's all it is. But they believe in the basic idea that you've got to use government force to destroy people's rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which, as the Declaration of Independence says, which we just celebrated not too long ago, adhere to everybody, not just American citizens. So that's why I think that what you and I are doing and other libertarians is of critical importance. Is number one, we're trying to show people this is not freedom. This is not what freedom is. This is what freedom is. And then secondly, this is what we need to do. We need to dismantle, abolish, repeal infringements on freedom in order to achieve the free society. And I would say that, throughout history, all great movements in history have been led by an infinitesimally small minority of people. But it's only that principal case that can cause people to question and challenge what they've been taught, that the welfare regulatory warfare state is freedom, and that you're not going to get freedom by just getting better people in public office, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. You're going to get freedom by dismantling infringements on freedom, which then leave in place a freedom, free market, private charity, limited government system.
Yeah, I think, I've mentioned it, I believe, before, but I have occasionally gone to Republican events here in South Carolina, particularly before the COVID business. My wife and I, just because we have friends in common, we would occasionally go to these luncheon, Republican luncheon thing once a month. And so these candidates for state and local positions were offering themselves, for the upcoming Republican primary. Please vote for me. I want to give back. I care about my community. And so in the Q&A, I raised my hand and I said, well, I realize time is short because there were like 5 or 6 people there doing their spiel. But could each one of you take maybe just 30 seconds, a minute, and just mention 1 or 2 government programs that you think could be either radically reduced or repealed, given that you've been pointing out in your general comments, government is too big, government spends too much, the government interferes too much in the private sector. What particular 1 or 2 government programs do you think could be repealed or radically cut back? As the phrase goes, you could hear the crickets chirp. Dead silence. Now, to be fair and balanced here, I know it's a shocking thought, I have progressive and Democratic Party acquaintances. Friends would be going too far, but acquaintances. And I asked them, I said, I understand that you think that government needs to do all of these things, healthcare, Social Security, redistribution of wealth, public housing, minimum wage laws, the whole litany of them. And I would say to them, what aspects of our life do you think government should not be involved in, that should not intrude or limit or inhibit? Now, 10 or 20 years ago, those who are Democratic Party or progressives would have said freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Well, that's gone because now there's fake news and there's misinformation, and we have to watch, we have to censor social media because we can't allow people to be telling things that we've decided are wrong or undesirable. So what are we left with when I talk to these people and ask this type of question? Gender reselection and sexual orientation. That is about all that they believe the government shouldn't be involved with, other than subsidizing your choice. They want government to pay for your gender reselection or your sexual orientation in some various ways. But other than that, they have a hard time. What government program isn't needed? What government spending could be? They're nonplussed. See, it's both just different conclusions phrased in different ways, whether you're talking to people on the left or the right. They cannot imagine a world, even a limited part of the world, where the state would not view it as its duty and responsibility to regulating, controlling, commanding, restricting, and overseeing. That is the dilemma we face on both the left and the right.
Yeah, your story about going to that Republican meeting reminded me of Bertie Baltic, who was always a great supporter of the libertarian movement. Lived in Ohio. He passed away several years ago, but Bernie told me that whenever he got a fundraising appeal from any politician, Democrat or Republican or whatever, he would say, "I will consider donating to your campaign upon receipt of your statement of principles." He said, they never responded. They always dropped the subject because there are no principles in this. This is just a matter of who's going to better manage the welfare, warfare, regulatory state. But what's funny about this, Richard, is that we know what Biden and Harris would do. They would continue doing what they've been doing for 4 years now. I mean, there's no surprise there. Nothing's going to change. But what I find kind of amusing is how there's so many people that think, oh, Donald Trump's going to dismantle the deep state. He's going to train the state. Well, we already know what he's going to do. We have 4 years of him in office. There are no surprises here. If the Republicans had run somebody new, they could conceivably say, oh, well, he's going to lead America in a different direction. Trump is not purporting to change anything than the 4 years that he was already in, where he kissed the ring of the CIA. He surrounded himself with the generals. He brought in John Bolton to advise him. He said that he's not going to touch Social Security or Medicare. He had the free stimulus checks from COVID. Government debt soared under his administration. In other words, there really isn't any difference between these people. Why? Because they all believe in the same system. And again, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, this is just a battle of who's going to have the largesse, access to the largesse. Is it going to be the Democrats? Is it going to be the Republicans? But there's no freedom involved here.
Yeah, let me sort of reinforce that, is that when Trump was in the White House, it was around 2018 or 2019, but before the COVID thing set in. And he was having a press conference. And one of these CNN reporters, Acosta, if I remember his name, was asking him a blunt, typical CNN question of Trump. And Trump's response was from the podium, "Your job is to report the real news. Leave it to me to run the economy." Notice this. I'm the dictator of the American economy. This is how Trump thinks. And if anybody thinks that the 4 years since he left office has changed anything in his mindset, you just had to listen to his inaugural address. Not his inaugural address, his acceptance speech at the convention, where he tells in a calm voice the horror, the tragedy of the attempted assassination on him, the innocent victims who were either injured or killed in that episode as well. But he can't let go. He then goes off the teleprompter and he's with the border issue, or making America great by stopping imports, or this, that, and the other. He cannot get over the central planning mentality complex that pervades his very persona.
Yeah, absolutely. And people feed into this because everybody's indoctrinated with the notion that it is the president's job to manage the economy. I mean, isn't that the primary means by which presidents are judged? Has he done a good job managing the economy? And of course, that's where the Federal Reserve comes into play, that when they got easy money, oh boy, he's managing the economy well. And if they happen to hit a period of time where the Fed's raising interest rates to rein in what they've previously done, oh, he's done a terrible job at managing the economy. But notice that hardly anyone, with the exception of libertarians, questions the notion that it's the job of the president and the government in general to manage the economy.
Well, you see, but before Biden's withdrawal, and he's fighting for gaining the nomination after that debacle of that presidential debate, which, don't look behind the curtain and see how feeble-minded the current president is. What was he saying over the last 3 weeks? I have shown my ability. I have brought down inflation. I've given us the best jobs in American history. I've restored the income of the middle class. I'm helping the poor. I respect and want to subsidize things for women. I. Is that central planning mentality any different than when Donald Trump tells the CNN reporter at a press conference, let me run the economy?
No, it's exactly the same.
They're cut from the same cloth. It's just that their part of that cloth wants to arrange things one way, and on the other side of the cloth, the other fellow wants to arrange it a little differently.
Right. And the people who pay the price, because this is a system that is not going to end well. We already see signs of that. This is a system that's not going to end well for the American people. So on that note, Richard, we'll wrap things up. I am sure there's going to be a lot more to talk about it in the run up to November. So as always, enjoyed the conversation. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for your support of FFF. We're midway through the year, and I want to thank you all for the support you've given us, and we could sure use your help here in the middle of the year. And Richard, as always, I enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to talking to you next week.
Until next time.